passion for photography has led me to work for a variety of places shooting a variety of objects. I've shot product photography for a variety of companies, including Fred Segal, Boeing, Mattel, and as a staff photographer, shooting motorcycles and machines. All of these experiences, wow, look at that. Can I just say, look at that. Woo! Pink. It's actually red. This screen is a little magenta. Anyway, so all of these experiences really helped define my mastery of indoor studio lighting techniques. Again, woo! Hey, it's Barbie's car, but it wasn't before. Anyways, all right. All right, so moving on. My series titled Nature Dissected, which is behind you all, led me in a different but not unrelated direction, being that all these shots for this series were taken outdoors using only natural lighting. So it was no longer about me taking the object to be photographed and setting it in a position that I chose and then manipulating the lighting around the object to create the highlights and shadows where I wanted them. Now I would have to position myself in relation to the light, which was the sun, and the object in order to achieve the positioning of the highlights and shadows where I wanted them, and also to choose the compositions that I found appealing to me. This also required choosing appropriate exposures, of course, to create blacks where I wanted them, and highlights too. Again, very blown out magenta, maybe you can see, and you can see on the wall behind you. I also chose very shallow depth of field for each individual shot that I then later compiled together. Where I placed my focus would vary from image to image, which for me created a sense of movement within the final picture. The shallow depth of field also was intentional and helped keep the color's importance in the forefront, and also the viewer from identifying exactly what the object was. Right. That, however, was only one step of the process, but it was the one that created the consistency and cohesiveness of this series. By that, I mean the lighting scenario. In choosing my lighting scenario, the visuals became more alive, more vivid, by making sure that each macro shot had definite highlights versus a flat lighting scenario, the kind you would get from shooting in shade. So even while using the same technique. So for example, here, you notice, woo, bright. You can tell that this is a shot in all in shade, and this one has white highlights. You can see better from here, but anyways. All right, so I decided to shoot in macro, or very close up, in order to detach the viewers from the known subject. I really do love the idea of being familiar with an object and yet becoming surprised by a different angle or a different perspective. And I feel this really just comes from my love of details and seeing things as objects of design. So I decided that my subject for this series would be plant life. And I went to various locations here in Southern California and photographed multiple shots of each plant, whether it be a succulent, a flower, a tree. I shot whatever I found inspiring, and I kept myself in the moment, not knowing or trying to predict how the images would be put together, but just allowing each macro shot to speak to me in its own way. That then leads into what I would call the reconstruction phase of the series. Here is where I started to play with putting the images together and seeing how I felt about them. I would crop, rotate, duplicate, flip, set the images together, kind of like you spread them out on a tabletop and you're playing with them in that way. And I would play until, again, I felt something spoke to me, kind of like creating a sort of collage. Mind you, there were many, many original shots to choose from. After shooting, I would edit down my original shots and then select from those edited images the ones that I felt maybe they're going to go well together. This was and continues to be a very intuitive and very time-consuming part of the process. Sometimes this means that I have to step away from the creation and come back to it another day. Sometimes it means the pieces that I thought would go together, they just really don't. It's just really about pushing the creation forward until you feel you've taken it to its ultimate place, and you're satisfied with the result in your gut. It speaks to you. And actually, each step can be, and generally speaking, is intuitive and time-consuming. The decisions I have made about shooting macro shots, what composition I choose when shooting each individual shot, the exposure I'm choosing, and the way I reconstruct these pieces into a new creation, they're all intentional, and they reflect my personal experience with nature and the natural environment. The final pieces are my translation of how I see nature as still lifes or objects of design, based upon my interpretation of color, design, and feeling.